Boom, we're recording.
Hey everybody, welcome to Dad Talk. Today I am your host, Eric Carroll, joined as always by my man,
Chris Gannon.
And tonight we've got a very special guest, Miss Kelly Jones. You might know her former husband, Alex Jones from InfoWars, but Kelly, how are you doing tonight?
Well, I'm very grateful to be here, Eric. It's great to see you and Chris, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yes, ma'am. Right away, guys, I'd like to list our sponsors because without them, this would not be possible. We are sponsored by the Isaac Law Firm, the newest sponsor, the Clock Law Firm, Upstream Growth Consultants, the Father's Rights Movement, and the House Champ, Mr. Yahya McLean. He's got his title. Now let him help you get yours. But Kelly, I want to jump right into this because I want to pick your head about something that we don't get to talk about much over here, which is like high-profile cases and cases where a lot of money has came into play. I think it's a general misconception that, you know, the father gets the short end of the stick all the time, but that's just not true. And I think your story tonight will help somebody that's going through that. Could you tell us a little bit of what it's been like trying to fight against this machine, really?
Well, I would say, like most litigants that file for divorce, it took me a long time to come to that decision, and I filed collaboratively trying to work it out. And I was forced to go into litigation. And once I found myself in there, like I believed in sort of the concept that we as Americans generally have from TV, even of law and order, or even antiquated Matlock, whatever, that law was this golden and perfect thing and a trustworthy, safe place where justice would be served. And what I have found in what's now over 6 years of litigation is that, for instance, in my case, even winning a jury trial, I'm still in litigation. So I've found it to be a very complicated, incentivized, money-based system. We all know it's an adversarial system, replete with many, many problems. Yeah, it's been a ride. I mean, if I could give you my docket sheet, which I can't because my case is sealed, it'd be like a paperback book, like, so many motions and actions and hearings. And somebody once told me my jury trial had a longer transcript than a major Microsoft trial. So basically, my position on all of that is the more money that can be attained by, there are some very great ethical attorneys, but unethical attorneys or incentivized unethical experts or sort of adjuncts to this system, they will push the conflict at the expense of the children to pad their wallets when they know that they're doing so unethically. So it's a pretty shocking thing to discover. And I'm working on developing tools to help clients that are sort of, I think it works for all clients, but to really understand where your money's going, what you are needing to document or to know generally about the process, how to protect yourself, and how to communicate effectively with your counsel to save money and things of that nature. But even if you do all those things, let's face the facts, if you've got a judge or a court that's allowing these actions to continue when evidently they're not in the children's best interest, which is another thing we should talk about. But if they're allowing that to happen, you're still going to be in this litigation. So you've got to just do your best to be your best. And that's for you, really. It's for your kids. When you take care of yourself, it's taking care of them too. Right. So
Kelly, I want to pick your head about something real quick. It's bad enough when we're going through divorce and we're going through these cases, but when it's in the public eye, when there's people that are watching this because they know who your husband is, they know what you're going through. What has that process been like, knowing that all of these people are watching your case?
Well, actually, I first filed to seal my case way back when I filed collaboratively. I thought, let's protect the kids, let's keep them out of the public eye. And even after the media was present, they did a pretty good job of sort of respecting our kids' privacy. I think that privacy and sealed cases are actually a problem for litigants when they're in a high conflict divorce, because that's the crux of the First Amendment. It isn't just free speech. It's also the presumption of openness, that we need to have open courts and awareness, which I think in these higher conflict cases, not just mine, but maybe a celebrity divorce or whatever it is, so that people can understand what's really going on and be like, I think that itself would raise eyebrows, like, how is this happening? But as far as being in the public eye, like, it's very hard. It sort of goes towards the power dynamic. We were talking about how I don't, there's this sort of myth to me, and you already mentioned it, I believe, that, men usually get the short end of the stick. And I truly don't believe that's the case. I believe it's sort of the less powerful party or the less wealthy party who doesn't have the money to fund the litigation, who isn't maybe wanting to fund the litigation, right? That is usually getting the short end of the stick. So in my case, it was, I would say it was frustrating, the jury trial coverage, like people joking about like some of the things that my ex-husband said on the stand about a bowl of chili or a performance actor, and still joking about it like it's funny. It's like, no, these are horrible in the context of this litigation, that somebody would say they can't remember somebody's grade because they had a bowl of chili. That's not really funny. It's really like, should immediately be like, what the heck? Like this dad, whatever. But like the performance actor thing was really tough, and people still joke about it, and people still like kind of believe that he's acting, I guess, even though he's testified contrarily in the Sandy Hook case and in the current litigation I'm in. But what was really hard is I tried to unseal my case. I actually really was grateful for the press's presence, because behind closed doors and even after the jury, things have been so really unjust. Like as far as like due process 101, like not noticed for hearings, orders entered when I wasn't even allowed to be in the courtroom, things of that nature, right? But after the jury trial, my ex-husband went on the air on his show that then had like 2 million something, a day or something of viewers, and lied about the history of the case and construed me to be a crazy person, and lauded the wonderful court and said that they thought they should rule this way, and they did ultimately, and went on there with his attorney. And I mean, y'all have been in litigation for a while, so like everybody's like, well, sue for defamation. Well, it doesn't really work like that.
Right.
The word's out there, and then I start getting all kinds of threats and accusations, and my kids are seeing this. And so it's just ugly. I mean, I think the best thing we can do is to be dignified and respectful within the process and outside of it. But I do understand why people do want open courts, me particularly, like that's a point of my advocacy, because in secrecy, terrible things can happen, right?
And the other thing our audience needs to know, and I actually found this out by following your case a few years ago, Texas is one of the only states where you can have a jury trial. It's not like here in Maryland where you go in and the court, the judge makes the decision based off of hearing evidence. And in Texas, you can have a jury trial. Can you capitalize on what that's like a little bit for our audience? Because that's a very foreign concept to a lot of people watching this interview.
Well, I think it's a shame that other places don't have, it's a basic constitutional right to have a trial by jury. However, I will say that my experience, it doesn't really matter, because the judge can abuse their discretion, and the remedy for that is a tremendous amount of appellate work and, judicial complaint to people that are probably have associated with the judge or whatever. And then you become this, agitated person when you're just trying to get justice. But as far as the process goes, I mean, before we got to jury, we were at $6 million. I got about maybe 10% of our state, even though it's a community property state.
Right.
So that jury trial itself was like my side, at least $1 million. And it was every day, all day in my case, which is what it's been, unfortunately, every day for pretty much 6 years, and incredibly harrowing, just exhausting, like any hearing or trial would be. And frustrating, because even when the jury came back with a decision for me to be primary parent, the court wouldn't even entertain any change in orders for a month. And then she did all the stuff that was in violation of the Texas Family Code, like gave him conservatorship, which is the only thing that the jury in Texas can rule on. So that's important to know too. Like, it's really hard for litigants, especially if they're getting into this, to understand the really complicated intricacies of the law, right? But so the jury in Texas only decides conservatorship, like medical, educational, and they can decide primary residence. They don't decide possession and access. So if you've got some very, highly incentivized attorneys who are paid all kinds of money to come and write brief after brief about why it should be this way, who are willing to go on a huge radio show and tell the judge how she should rule, which is a Texas disciplinary rules, professional rules for the attorneys. It's a violation. Does it matter? You think it would matter, but it's kind of like when you get in the courtroom, you guys know this.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like justice is going to prevail and the remedy is so complicated. So I would say exhausting, harrowing, you know. It was also very validating because in my case, for instance, I was able to prove that the incentivized experts had admitted to perjury about saying I had done things I absolutely had not done, and that they
Wow.
had said that separately amongst themselves. And, you know, I was able to show a lot and to show basically the confirmatory bias that was built up. And even the jury clearly saw it, right? Because they decided for me.
Right.
But even with that, the judge was like, sorry. You know, she didn't say sorry. She was like, no. And so I'm still working on it. I do consider myself to have won insofar as that nobody wins in court and the
Right.
kids are the ones who lose the most, but you win when you proceed according to your ethics and abilities, which is a very hard thing to navigate in this,
Right.
honest to God.
Now, Kelly, one of the things that I told you prior to starting the show that I wanted to ask you, can you kind of walk us down the road of how mentally and emotionally you were affected when the alienation and all the court proceedings began, especially having the spotlight on you, being Alex's ex-wife at that point, and the media, you know, looking into your case? Can you talk about how you felt, some of the things you went through, and then how eventually you built yourself back up, started to cope with them to be the person that we're talking to on screen right now?
Okay, well, thanks for asking, Chris. Well, first of all, the jury trial that everybody saw, that wasn't a divorce case. That was the first modification that Alex filed. He sued me again for custody a year after the divorce was final. And so that was when we were in the public eye. But actually, like I said before, my case was super secret, sealed, and private. I didn't have hearings in a courtroom or a courthouse. I had them in like a fancy conference room at the W Hotel or in a fancy office building. And I didn't even know my rights to have that ability to be in an open court. And I didn't have any community. So I was really isolated. I left what I've been outspoken about, try not to be too detailed about it, but I believe was a really bad situation of domestic violence. And I was a homeschool mom. I was with my kids all the time. And I was homeschooling them on the day that I went to my first mediation. I was so close to all my kids. And when I moved to litigation and one of these experts came in, and there are good experts, but there's a lot of really, in my experience, experts that are willing to do whatever. I'm not saying that they're bribed, but I'm saying that they're getting a lot of money to keep the conflict going, right? And they're getting referrals on other cases, and all these people are working together. And in Texas, judges are elected, so it's also a political thing. But my kids started showing up. This person came in, and even though my ex-husband wasn't exercising even the possession that he agreed to, she started pushing my kids more and more with him. And my kids were showing up completely distressed and unhappy and alleging things about me, which were absolutely not true. And, just shocking things were happening. I didn't know what was going on. I was like,
Right.
what the heck is going on? I didn't have, I had never, during my marriage, my ex-husband hadn't allowed me to be on social media. I was very, very isolated in the country on my property. And
Right.
I started obviously doing some research, and I'm like, wow, this is alienation, right? And I believe that this phenomenon exists. I think it's been misused against, and we talked about this too, like parental alienation, which are the manifestations of that you'll see in your kids is like coached language, unilateral or reciprocal support for a parent, even when you don't, like say you say, well, gee, I really like to do this. Well, my dad likes to do that too. You know, like some the kids leaping up to that. Allegations of things that are obviously not true and a sort of reworking of their own mental history of what it is. It's really
Right.
kind of a form of brainwashing. And let's face it, how many TV shows are there about this? It's not like it doesn't
None.
exist, but it's the way that,
There's
again, like,
one in the parental alienation. We've got it.
That's right.
Today.
right? And but it does get misused, and so I sort of look at it more as like court abuse or
Right.
child abuse or coercive control. You know, and I'm here with y'all, and Parental Alienation is, and you guys are sponsored by the Dad's Rights Movement. I believe all parents have rights, and I believe it's super important for us to narrow the gender divide in this sort of area of discussion and come together on things that we can effectively change and work together in our own different ways and have it be just everyone's rights. Because as we were talking before, Eric, you know, lots of moms do lose their kids for horrible, unfair reasons. And it almost becomes in this community like divided along the lines, sort of like a marriage, right? And we really have a lot of places we can come together and meet to affect change, which does need to happen.
Right.
Yeah, and we've started a new podcast called Mom Talk today, and the father's rights thing. So that's there has been a little bit of gender bias, and it's hard because a lot of the fathers that are making their way inside the community, when they hear a mother speak, they're thinking that's their ex sitting over there. It's the same thing with mothers. When they see a father talking, they think the same thing. But there's definitely things that we try to target with those, but the community has got to come together. This isn't a one-sided issue. There's no race, there's no gender, there's no country. I'm telling you, like, this is a worldwide issue. And that was something we was talking about before we went live, was raising the awareness to the next level, getting it out to the general population and getting more people involved. Do you have any ideas on how we could actually start advocating and bringing in more people?
I sure do, Eric. And I just want to hop back to one point when you're saying people are saying dad's rights or mom's rights and they're reacting to that. I mean, that sort of goes around what we were talking about before in what I'm working on, which is I'm developing a program called Brave and Flourish. It's your reactivity. It's the emotional reactivity that we inherently have. And people are super raw and upset, justifiably so, in divorce or in custody litigation, right? So it's sort of coming to a place of wise mind where we as a group or as individuals can realize that it's going to be a whole heck of a lot more effective. And yeah, there are people that get really hurt that are dads that deserve to have their kids. And yeah, there's moms that get really hurt that deserve to have their kids. But as long as we're looking at it like that, we've got to just kind of get wiser about it, I think. And as far as affecting change, I'm doing something kind of different. Like I'm developing the Brave and Flourish program to kind of show people how to strengthen in places. What I say, like, you prevail no matter what, you win no matter what. If you become a better, calmer, more stronger person while you're in it. And it's certainly not easy, but if you can get strong while you're going through this, imagine the power that you're developing. And that sort of, for me, crosses across all things, not just therapeutically, through the different therapeutic models I've discussed, or through dance or strength training, physical training, whatever it is, but also like entrepreneurial development, developing your own voice. Who are you going to be when you're coming out of this? What can you do? And that's also a component of the therapy that I participate in, which is a skills-based therapy, which I love, DBT. But what is the meaning in this for you? Like, how do you find the meaning? How can you use what you have to make a difference? And as far as, sort of affecting change and raising awareness, you guys are doing a fantastic job.
Thank
You're
you.
getting all over the place out there. Congratulations to you all. I mean, there's all kinds of different arenas of discussion and communities around this. There's guys like you that are covering what you're doing and bringing community together. There are people that talk about, problems with divorcing people that are maybe narcissists. There's people that talk about parenting and divorce. There's all different kinds of discussion. I think we go back again to the presumption of openness in the First Amendment. I think that we have a big problem in family court where parents are sort of disempowered, disenfranchised by having their own voice and their own constitutional right of moral instruction sort of suppressed. So, I mean, basically, at the crux of it all is the family, right? Like at the base of everything, if you can't speak truthfully to your kids about what's going on, and that does not mean he is bad or she is bad. It means like, I'm your mom, and there goes my phone. Sorry about that, guys.
Sorry.
But I might have some feedback now.
So Kelly, there's something else I'd like to ask you about.
But could I add one more thing to that too?
Yeah.
Because I think I have a particularly interesting way to raise awareness. And what I'm trying to do when I develop the other sort of side of what I'm doing, which is divorce client savvy, it's client-based knowledge and information that will help clients understand what they need to know, how to document things if unfortunately they're going awry, how to be effective with your attorney, how to save money by being effective with your attorney. But I'm actually developing not only like hard copy things, but apps and things of that nature. Because my idea is this. It's obvious you've got some great corporate sponsors, right, that are actually ethical attorneys. There are good guys out there, and I've met with a lot of them that say, it's messed up out there. Like, what can we do? Well, if you've got a system that is transparent to both sides, so like if you have experts in your case, like in a case like mine, there have been something like 30 plus experts, if you can believe it. I mean, it's super complicated. But if they have to be transparent to both sides, if maybe even your communications, you'll agree with your ex or your, the person with whom you had a child, that you will communicate openly to each other about what your thoughts and plans are in this, then that transparency creates a discourse, and it gives you the ability to defend yourself in advance from possible future things. But if we had attorneys and experts and the therapeutic community who we really need to reach out to, we really need to reach out to the people with like the APA and the different psychological associations to say, hey, this is a problem. And I think they do know it's a problem. But say you have people that will only operate in this sort of a model, and they become like, instead of having the American Express badge or whatever, they get the badge that we're going to use this type of a system, whatever it may be. Then that's somebody that you can trust going into, right? Or that at least like that is willing to have this be less of a fight and more of a collaborative process. And so I think that's one way we can do it. We also need to, like, I don't know if we discussed this on the air, but getting more education into administrators of schools and medical providers and things of that nature, because what happens is the complexity of litigation can present the litigant as being somehow not as much a part of the child's life, or when they express a desire to be more, my son's changed in here, of a child's life, then that can really look weird to school. But schools need to really understand what can be going on, and they need to make it more accessible to joint managing conservators, basically.
Kelly, one thing, and symptoms that we've noticed with parental alienation is, even though, say, you're the one that's being alienated, there's an unbelievable guilt that comes with that, with not being able to see your child. Sometimes you start letting some of the criticism come your way. And when you're not seeing your children, that's one of the worst things that could ever happen to you. You don't have your family. Yes. And I think it becomes one of those things that we just focus on all the time. And it can get a little unhealthy sometimes, because you still got to live your life. One of the reasons they are alienating you and they do the things that they're doing is to get you to where you don't want to do anything, and you just kind of give up on life. Has there been something that you've done to keep your mind focused and like kind of get outside and keep your mind healthy?
Absolutely. I mean, what you're talking about basically, Eric, is like being gaslit. It's this typical thing where, I mean, this happened to me a lot in my marriage. Somebody will tell you there's something wrong with you so much that you start questioning, or your reality isn't correct. Like something's wrong with your perception. So you start like kind of questioning it. And if you have all this attention focused on you and are under such rigors, and then your child, you already feel guilty just for divorcing, right? Like you didn't want your relationship not to work out, or for separating, whatever it may be, a custody situation. And then you see your child being hurt, and you believe at some place in you, there's this knowledge that you had a part in whatever didn't work out in the relationship. And so it's very tough. I mean, for me, I have to be very dedicated to my self-care. And that's why, like, I have this thing that I want to bring forward to people, like Brave and Flourish. Like, I'm super committed to, no matter what, taking care of myself and taking time for the place where I reside, which is in prayer or meditation, and strengthening my mind, learning things, whatever it may be. But I work a lot in mindfulness and radical acceptance. And to me, that looks like faith and prayer. And to me, even if your faith is different than mine, you can and must find faith in yourself. And so speaking to that part of yourself, or to your higher authority, to me it's God and Jesus Christ, and reaching out and believing in that enough to keep on keeping on and taking time. Sometimes you got to take a break.
Right.
You got to sharpen the saw. I mean, this is like, you got to kind of almost look at it like training, like you're in training for this thing. It's kind of a war, like a
Yeah,
custody
you're at
war.
war.
You're at war. You might not have picked the war. I always say, well, they call it high conflict or a custody battle. I say, well, it's not really a battle if you're under siege, right?
Right.
And so also the defense. I mean, stand tall in yourself. Like I think the worst things that happens to people is they're told to bow down and acquiesce to the failures and who they are and allow all this complexity in. Yes, acknowledge if you've got shortcomings and grow and strengthen, but don't acknowledge things that you are not true about yourself ever. And if you've got some issues, who doesn't? Take care of it. Get help. Get help from somebody who's a real healer. Get it because you want it, because you want to be a better parent, not to win in court, not for this and that and the other.
Kelly, would you say it's fair to say that in your specific case that attorneys probably had a big influence on getting it to the point where it is here unnecessarily? Would you say that?
I mean, I would say that 100%. I'm
Okay.
going to turn a little bit because I can't, the sun's in my eyes. I mean, yes. I mean, this is so tragic. And what's really tragic is these are attorneys with like super lawyer behind their name. And
Right.
yet, like in the case, if you just look at Alex's attorneys, I mean, for goodness sakes, these are people who went on the air and told a judge how she should rule and praised her. And actually, just before our last orders were entered, they donated $6,500 to her fellowship, the fellowship in her name. So, I mean, yeah, no, they make money. And I think at a certain juncture in my case, I really feel like they know that they have acted so egregiously that they're keeping it up just so that, they're just waiting for me to fall down. And that's one thing I haven't done yet. I won't quit. I won't quit for my kids. I can't afford fancy attorneys anymore. I'm my own attorney, which I do not recommend if you can find counsel.
Yeah,
it's
I've done
almost
that before.
impossible to win pro se, right? But I'm not going to give up on my kids, and I'm not going to give up on me. And I've been thinking about that a lot too lately. Like now my kids are older. When this started, I mean, my son is now aging out. My youngest daughter was 6. Or she was 5 when I filed, lost her when she was 6 years old. She lost her mama and was raised by nannies and strangers. And now she's 12. And as kids get older, I think first kids are really bound to you, through the developmental process. And they're kind of looking outward more. If they're looking outward and they see a really strong, positive, kind person, and Lord knows when you're dealing with an alienated kid, sometimes it's really hard.
Right.
One of the things I've started doing lately is putting up more boundaries, whereas before during my litigation, whenever I would put up a boundary, that's when the allegations would start and I would lose my kids because what kid's going to want boundaries, I guess, and they're rewarded for this behavior, whatever. And it's been very brutal in my case, and it's never the child's fault ever. But, hold your boundaries. Be the parent you would be if you weren't in this. Be true to you, man. I mean, ultimately, like this divorce, this custody case, it won't last forever. I mean, it's horrible.
Now,
Like,
can you
is it
give
not
an example?
horrible?
Can you give an example of what you mean by boundaries? Because I think people watching this might need to hear it so they can learn from it what you mean when you say boundaries.
Yeah, sure. So one of the things like I was forced into 800 hours of court ordered therapy, which is 40 years. And I had to do that in 2 years. So I've done more therapy than like so many people. And I don't have like a diagnosis, right? I just have this overlay. And my ex-husband had to do less than 10 hours. So that's a little funny. But one of the things that I've learned to do is to really be inquisitive too. Like, so when you have a child coming at you, accusing you of things or being really just ugly to you, like I've had my kids call me fat and, unattractive and make fun of me, mock me. This is sort of a behavior we see, right, guys? Like this is not uncommon. But I really, the first thing is to ask questions. Well, gee, it seems like you think that I shouldn't wear this outfit. Why's that? but not rude. Like, get inquisitive with them, get them to kind of open their mind about, well, why is it that you think that it's appropriate for you to tell me what I look like or whatever, I mean, I love you, but I'm an adult. Is this appropriate? Is this what you would say to your teacher, maybe, or something like that, without getting confrontational, without, pestering them too much about it. I mean, with my kids, I mean, I didn't used to be able to say this, honest to God. But now, like, if my child's being really rude, and sometimes my kids can be really rude, and I've got 2 teenagers, so that kind of comes to the territory anyhow.
You're not alone there, Kelly.
Yeah.
It's not just your kids.
I know, right? So you've got this this super complex situation with the alienation, whatever, coercive control overlay. And then you've got kids that are already going to be challenging authority or whatever. But I mean, if my child is rude to me, I mean, I can't, there's many ways that I can't impose a consequence, especially like if you're under supervision or something like that. But you can at least say, well, if you're going to speak to me in that way, you need to go to your room for a bit. And if they won't do that, then you can't maybe mitigate that if you've got a supervisor there or something like that. But whatever sort of, I wouldn't say leverage, because you're not trying to leverage your kids. You're providing them a consequence to teach them.
Make them think about what they're saying and rationalize that, hey.
Because doesn't it take away your parental authority to have a child that disrespects you? And why do we have parental authority but to teach children how to function in the world, that they're going to have, to function in a certain way, to have manners, whatever. But just imposing a logical, normal consequence for a child. If you've got a teenager, I'm sorry, you're not going to be able to have your phone, for the next few hours or whatever. Something simple like that, which maybe, honestly, you might not be able to do, but do what you can. And what happens is we get so scared, right? Like, you guys are alienated dads, right? So you've been accused, I'm assuming, right?
Yes.
Is that,
yes, false accusations.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing more terrifying than this beautiful, wonderful child that you love with your whole heart alleging something against you because they're being hurt, right? They're being set up to do this thing, and then having to deal with knowing that their accusation could further put them away from you being able to protect them, right? It's horrible. So you really also have to get super aware. So a lot of us in this situation have post-traumatic stress syndrome or whatever, post-traumatic PTSD, because it's traumatizing. It's horrible. Taking your baby, I mean, look at like what happens to a cow if you take the calf to the other farm. Like, it's just in our mammalian instinct, right? But we're humans, and we have reason, and we have deeper love. And so you have to really learn to understand what triggers you, because you can become reactive in your stress and fear, which I will say has happened to me. Like, the time I yelled at my kids, I was totally terrified about what was going to happen to them. And so they were able to use this isolated incident, which was a triggered event, to, justify their gaslight, false narrative, whatever. So you've got to learn to recognize when you're getting triggered, and you've got to develop some coping mechanisms. And sometimes in severe distress tolerance, it means you walk away. Like, you're just, you might not be able to solve the solution. Like, we all want to solve. We have a part of our mind that's our emotion mind and our wise mind, and our emotion mind is ruminating on this thing. How can I solve it? And that's your whole life, right? If you're trying to save your kid, but you've got to get your wise mind in action so you can find a place to where you can be collected, even when it's super unfair. I mean, and also know you're not alone, right? Like we're in a community of people that have experienced horrible injustice, and the worst injustice is knowing your kids are in an awful situation and not being able to help them. It's terrifying. It's a heartbreak. It's the tragedy of your life, right? There are people on, I look, another skill that I use is like comparing yourself to other people. Like, you guys compare yourself to me, I'll compare myself to you. Like, we're in this together. But I also look at people that are on death row for 20 years that have been, this one guy, Curtis Flowers, 7 trials have been overturned, and yet he's still in there, man. So there's just, we're on this earthly plane. I survived by faith largely, and there's just a lot of injustice, and you're just going to have to learn, what are you going to do with what's been given to you?
And I think that's really important, Kelly, that we talk about that sense of community and having wise counsel that we can turn to.
Amen.
Because as parents, We are just imperfect people. We're going to make mistakes. But if you're an alienated parent, and then you have to stand up and make some of the boundaries like you was talking about a while ago, we're very much more harder on ourselves. So I think having that counsel and this community to turn to is so important. Could you talk a little bit about the importance of having these people to talk to?
Absolutely. And I would say, like, my first sort of thing I started was called CustodyHero. And that wasn't around you being a custody hero. It was around the people in your lives who are heroes in your life when you're going through this. People that stand beside you, believe in you no matter what. I actually was able to leave my marriage finally because I actually got out of isolation. So community is a basic human need. And I think the community among this group of people is super important. But I also think it's super important to have external community, right? So you want to get involved with an interest that you love, like whatever it may be. You want to, like for me, it's dancing. I'm a tap dancer, or I'm a power lifter, whatever. Find something that you love where you can meet people, and in those spaces, yes, you'll meet friends and make close relationships where you will talk about it. But find a place to just be you and get into, like, I love dance and people love yoga and really mind body exercise, because you have to be controlling your muscles so much that your mind really can't think of anything else. Try to escape it a little bit. Among ourselves, I think community is super important, and these areas of discussion are super important. And I'm glad that people are doing them, and I will always participate. But for me, my particular place that I want to be is a place where people can talk about getting support and staying strong, right? It doesn't, because then it becomes sort of, it can become, and everybody is righteous in feeling this way and in emoting and feeling and sharing. And we really do need to change the broken family court system. But it can become a complex bitch arena, excuse my language, of, where you're preaching to the choir. I mean, let's get involved in our communities. Let's reach out, stay involved with each other, and empathize with each other and share with each other. And there's wonderful groups out there, and they have meant a tremendous amount to me. So I'm thankful to everybody for your advocacy and what you do. But also find a place where you can learn to just grow and how to deal with it, not just complain about it, right?
Right.
And bring that discussion into a broader audience. And I think we can do that. I think we can transition this into broader awareness. Of course, the people that make money off it don't want that to happen. So we're going to have to be creative. I've got a really interesting advocacy thing I'm about to do. I'm calling it the Family Court Circus, and I'm going to do an interactive performance with real performers during South by Southwest here in Austin,
Right.
to sort of present it as an allegory with information about what happens to people in the family court system. So,
Right.
and then raising media awareness about that. I mean, if you're a real activist, if you're in a horrible situation, civil disobedience might be important. I mean, I think that there might be a place where all of us should come together. We've tried to march, but we've got to join lines around central communal things that we do agree on, and not get separated by all the noise and the gender and we got to look who's behind stuff. And we need to find the leaders that are really motivated for change and that aren't also trying to make their own agenda out of this, because that does happen in political environments, and this is a political realm.
Right. And Kelly, one of the big things we're often have thrown at us here at Dad Talk is, well, you guys are just trying to make money. You're selling T-shirts, and people need to realize, in order to defeat this system, it's going to cost money. And we know our community is a very broken community financially. I'm part of that community. So is Eric. So are you. For us, it can be hard to make a $5 or $10 donation, but with that being said,
I'm going to interrupt you here because I have struggled with this too. Like, my heart breaks to hear that for you guys, because you have every need and every right to fund this fantastic thing that you're doing. And it's absurd. I hope it brings you great prosperity. I hope that, because I know that you guys are doing this for a reason, and that you will use for your prosperity to push forward your message and to affect change. No, we can't function off a shoestring. And this is not, like, from litigation to like buying your microphone, for God's sake, or paying your electric bill. But you should be able to, you guys have a real vision. I think you have a fantastic model from what I understand. I could, I'm sure people come at me, whatever. But I mean, you're building a really good network. I mean, building a broadcast network is super expensive. You have to fund it. You have to get syndicated. You have to build press materials. You have to have people developing content. You're producing your show. I mean, I worked in broadcast for like 20
Yeah.
years.
I think you know a little bit about it.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy.
You
Like
might
why
have built a small network somewhere.
yeah. So we also I mean, people can judge you and decide what they want to have their sticking point be. If it's on two guys that are trying to build a broad message to affect change and raising money to do so, I think you guys should have a good working nice car and a comfy house for your kids to ride, to come stay in. And I think you should, I support your industry entirely. And I reject that. I mean, I have free things that I offer like you guys do. Your broadcast is free, right? I mean,
Yep.
this is your heart, your time, and we've had how many discussions, Eric? Like a million billion, right?
Yes,
It takes a
ma'am.
while to build a program, right? So you're spending all this free time. You should be, I mean, obviously you've got to be compensated. And if you don't, the better funded you are, the more professional you'll be and the more outreach you'll have, the more airtime you can buy, the more stuff you can do. So that's just very short-sighted, and they're just bitter. And it's, as long as you're not in this for profit, which clearly you aren't. I mean, you can, I would say, like, you have to still live, right?
Right.
But as
Right.
long as you're in this for the right reason and you're using, like, I'm trying to build this app, I want it to make a ton of money because I'm going to use it to lobby or whatever. But
Right.
I might also take a vacation from now and then. I think that's perfectly valid with my kids. I might be a successful parent with my business, but I
Right.
will always stay true to my ethics. So if you're coming from an ethical place, you gotta survive, right?
Right. Well, and Kelly, part of my decision to do this with Dad Talk, and I believe Eric would agree, is I feel like at the point where I'm at in my cases, the answer is not going to come from within a courtroom. It's not going to come from within a broken system. The answer is going to come by standing up and changing this broken system and pushing and fighting for that change. And one thing we talked about a little bit earlier were constitutional rights. And
Yes.
I'm very firm on the belief that if people, after losing a custody battle, had the money to go challenge some of these decisions in a federal court, they would probably win. But the problem is after a custody battle, you're so financially drained, you're lucky to get gas in your car to get back and forth to work, for the next month or so. So that those findings that are being handed down through the circuit courts, like I really feel like they could be challenged constitutionally. It's just
Well,
takes a lot
I've
of money
got,
to do that.
yes, I agree with that. And I have something for you. So first of all, my heart breaks for you that you're at this juncture. And I sort of am at this juncture too, because I will not, number one, it's super hard to stay in litigation when it's harming your kids, right? Like, that even participating makes you a party, even though you didn't file or whatever. But I really can't afford it. I'm going to do what I can. I am learning and I'm fighting, right? But actually, I don't know if you know this, Eric, because I removed the current case that Alex filed against me. I removed it to federal court and I lost, and the findings were ridiculous. Basically, I raised a question of law, which is something every American can do. And if you search for my name or for Alex's name, you'll find my federal removal. And people can model off of that in their cases. What if we had like a mass movement of people that are maybe not like still have a chance, right? But maybe
Right.
people that have been in this for 6 years or just really can't afford it or whatever, but it matters to them, right?
Right.
What if we had a movement of people? I'm a constitutionalist. I'm 100%, and I've been shocked by what people who say they're constitutionalists will do in this venue. But maybe people can look at that and see if that's something they might want to do. It was rejected. They rejected it on case law saying that a loser can't go to federal court. Well, guess what? I didn't lose. I won. And so I filed also a finding of facts motion with the court saying, like, do I not have a way that I can raise a question of law in federal court? Well, of course I do. That's what they're there for, right?
Right.
Do these things not matter? So I haven't plugged it yet, which is kind of bad, but I'm working on it. My site is This Is Kelly Jones best domain I could get with the name Kelly Jones, which is pretty common. So this is kellyjones.com. And I'm going to be updating it ongoing. I will have a place where people can like just subscribe to get info on like the Steadfast Society, which is my free support group or whatever, or different things that I'm working on. But I will be posting my the various things I have in federal court now. And one of them is that removal, and it's strong. I mean, I think these questions are strong. I think we need to there are a lot of really good law groups, and we all know that the civil rights groups don't want to touch us with a 10-foot pole, but this is a civil rights movement that we're in.
It is.
You guys
absolutely.
are at the forefront. You know, the mom across the country who's just sitting there crying and praying for their kid, but is active and trying to stay present. They're in the forefront of it. There's a broad injustice and a brokenness in family court. The 14th Amendment was not written to only include specific classes and protected classes, and those classes should be protected. But the 14th Amendment applies to all of us, right? And so we all have the right to due process. We all have the right to our constitutional rights, you know?
Right.
So basically, I mean, I'm sorry. We just have to stay strong. But anybody who wants to model off of my thing can go to thisiskellyjones.com.
Kelly,
Is that up now, Kelly, or is it coming at a later date?
It's up, but it's like a shell, and I have to take down a lot of my sub-menus until I can get really live, because I'm building, like you guys, I'm doing everything myself pretty much, and I'm my own attorney against 3 law firms. Thank you very much. So I'm a little bit busy, and in state and federal court. So I'm really, and I have kids that I want to spend time with. And when I do, I certainly focus entirely on them. But yes, it's up for now and it's shelf warm. I promise you more. And I promise you also information on my network that I'm developing. Maybe we are working together eventually. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm doing a Prevail network around sort of the Brave and Flourish model with family court discussion, but also just strengthening things for litigants as far as litigation, self-care, and building your own sort of post-divorce you, right? Or during separation, divorce, custody litigation you.
Right. Now, Kelly, I just want to backtrack a little bit, because I know we have a time issue here, but the Steadfast Society, that's something that you just brought up, but you didn't bring up earlier. Could you tell people about that a little bit more?
Yeah, so this is the community that I'm building as like a free membership, and people can just come there, and it's more centered around like, we're not going to necessarily, I mean, people can obviously, express what they're going through, but it's more about supporting each other in that, and tips and information that I will relay, like free information, and then discussion around certain things that I think will really empower people, because I had no clue when I first filed for divorce that any of this could happen. And I have learned so much. And I would say one thing to everybody who's listening: if you're in any kind of custody or divorce litigation with children, whatever it may be, know what your orders are. Read your family code for your state. Understand and learn as much of the law as you can, because you go in there, and unfortunately we trust our counsel, and some are very good, and we will never be attorneys in our short expanse of time that we have to be attorneys in this. But if you understand what basic rights you and your kids have, and what you are supposed to be doing, which seems to be a big problem with some people, what you can and can't do, that will really help you a lot. And it may seem so fundamentally simple and ridiculous, but honestly, a lot of people don't. Organize your orders, organize the pleadings, know what pleadings are in your case, like learn what's being said, make sure and stay proactive. And like I said, I'm working on tools, and I'll have free tools there too, to help people sort of keep track of things. I mean, one of the big things I'm really super focused on is actually just like organization and file structure, and knowing how to keep track of all these complex things. Because in my case, it's very complex, but it is a complex situation. So you can set it aside, right? You know where it is, you know where it is, and then you get to go be with your kids, which is the ultimate goal. But also like be with you, right? Because let's face the facts too. Like in a normal situation, you have your kids, you're not just like, hi, I'm your mom all the time. Like even just being in their life, like normally, right? Like you're just around them being a human. So, and the more they see you, like maybe for me, I lost a lot of weight. I got strong and powerlift. Maybe they see you like, wow, this perception that I'm being told, this doesn't jive with the reality when I'm with this person, right?
Right.
Or wow, mom's really cool, or dad's awesome. He likes to, go to whatever it is that he does. I don't know. I'm trying to think of something. He likes to go to a succulent workshop. I don't know what it is. That maybe might not be it, but you know what I mean? Like go play golf or whatever it is,
Right.
Kelly, and you can forgive me if I kind of overstep my boundary with this. I just got to ask though, what would it mean for you to be able to get Alex to the table to where you two could, work this out and do what is best for the children, but to also, how awesome would it be to get him involved in this fight against family courts?
Well, I mean, I've offered a million. No, that's a little hyperbolic. I have just had him recently withdraw what was obviously not a truly presented offer to sit down and talk to me. I mean, I haven't even really spoken to him outside of like the litigation process or mediation in years. Unfortunately, some people are not able to let go of their vengeance and are just, I believe there's a toxicity there. And my empathy is with him. Like, I'm not here to say, oh, like make fun or anything. Like, I have tremendous empathy for people who are damaged or harmed and have negative behaviors that they exhibit, because I've seen it happen in my own kids from what they've gone through. Right. So, I mean, if somebody's not well and they can't help themselves, whose responsibility is that really? It's really the people that are enabling the behavior who should have shut it off long ago. But I mean, the sad thing is that at the very beginning, before InfoWars was a thing, before Alex Jones was Alex Jones, as he's a very different rendition now, but back when, we were, I don't know, before I divorced, basically, like, I mean, before all of this super bipartisan stuff, Alex was a libertarian, or so
Yeah.
he presented himself to be, and a constitutionalist. I mean, I think people should be really clear that libertarianism isn't a modified form of super conservatism.
Right.
Super conservatism. It's libertarianism is a focus on the Constitution and on what our structure of our country is founded on the law and our rights, and leave everybody alone, basically, right? Like, I think family court can be the ultimate opposite to that. And it has a standard that's not in accordance with law, but is this, sort of ephemeral best interest of the child standard, right?
Right.
I mean, if only Alex would start, and actually, he used to talk about family court, right? And about all these issues. And he had Nancy Schaefer on, who's a big hero in this movement, now deceased, may she rest in peace. If only he would come to his senses and do this, I think it would build his brand. I think it would help people see that healing is possible. I mean, I follow Christ, and I am always willing to have a heart of forgiveness. We have to be accountable for what we do. But man, if only it would change my children's lives and countless other children's lives.
Kelly,
it would be so impactful and so beautiful, and beauty is out there, Alex. You can come back to the Constitution. You don't, whatever has happened,
Please.
Right.
Please come back. Come to Jesus, man. Come back.
Kelly, I told Eric when we found out, we set the date for this interview. I was like, you know what? I guarantee you give me 10 minutes in a room with Alex Jones, I will get him to mediate with Kelly and change his whole position on this issue and have him start advocating for it. And, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I followed his show for a very, very long time. And I saw the change that you're talking about. And I'm a libertarian myself. And I really enjoyed that aspect of InfoWars, the libertarian Alex Jones. I felt like that's when the program was genuine and it was
two
true.
sides of the same coin.
And
and dog and pony show and all of these sound bites, and that I felt was true. That's why I was so shocked that he would basically use a system. And I do feel that this happened very clearly, that he disparaged and thought was unconstitutional against his own family, right? But I have long had that. Is that? I might have audio. It's FaceTime. Hi. I mean, I've long had that same dream and conviction. I have reached out to him about it. I have said it to countless people that were, that I cannot talk about who I was talking to. Like, let's get him to do this. He's
Right.
deplatformed. Let's get him to come back. He's going to build this great, beautiful thing. It's gotten very dark and ugly. We don't have to, the thing is that sadly, a lot of people make money off of Alex, including his counsel, including people
Right.
that keep him in this negative paradigm. And this has included his family members, I believe, and they've profited off of the divorce. So it's sad and sick. I invite you all before God to come to the table and be decent for the kids' sake. We can change this with an audience as big and as much money and power has been behind that platform. We could use that and we could change the world.
That's right.
We definitely could, because I mean, this is a fight, and we're inside of a community that, let's face it, most of the parents have been through this. They don't have money, and that's facing alienation. And Title 4D, you want to talk about one of the biggest battles that we've got out there, in a platform like that would just,
Right.
And I hear your heartbreak, Eric, and I'm so sorry. And it's valid. It's there, it's just so awful. And I want you to know that you are affecting change. What you're doing does matter. My experience of you is that you're a unifying force, and that your message is beautiful from what I know. I mean, I haven't watched you that much, but my experience of you is that right on, Brother Eric, keep on keeping on, believe, 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 and pray, 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 and believe, right? Because if we have faith as a mustard seed, the mountain is moved. So let's all just believe together. Let's just move the mountain together, but in your own time. Take care of you. Know that people respect and admire what you're doing, and it has value and it's important. And maybe we won't change it in our lifetime. It's up to God. But we're planting seeds towards tremendous change no matter what happens.
Well, I sure do appreciate that, Kelly. Do you have anything coming up, or something where people can find you? I know you've already plugged your website. I'm going to ask you to do it again.
Well, I'd be thrilled to do it one more time. It's thisiskellyjones.com. I'm going to be in relatively short order starting to post the Brave and Flourish and Divorce Client Savvy things I'm working on. I will have a sign up where you can go ahead and start participating in the Steadfast Society, and a lot of information and tools. So I'm there to support you. And also I will be posting, I'll be looking like y'all. And y'all are welcome to reach out to, but for people that want to be on the network that I'm doing, and it doesn't have to be my network. I just want this information to get out there, and I do know how to make it happen, right? That's my background. So I'm excited about engaging in more public discussion, different ways of doing it. And I'm just looking forward to what you guys have lined up, because you guys are just getting out there, and kudos to you.
Thank you.
Well, I sure do appreciate it. And Kelly, it was so nice talking to you tonight, and hopefully we'll see much more of you in the future.
Yes.
I sure hope so, Eric. And I care about you guys and your kids. You guys stay strong, keep the faith, and keep on keeping on.
Thank you. That was beautiful. That's got to be your sign off on your network.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. Kelly, we'll see you next time.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.